Hello and welcome back to Technical Writing. This is Professor Plyman, and today we're going to be talking about creating technical documents, or what process you will use as you are creating these documents, both for this class but also in your work life after school. So let's talk about the steps in the writing process. This is going to be pretty similar to, the steps in the academic writing process, but it is slightly different. So the steps are going to include planning, drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading. Now, I do want to mention that these 5 steps of the writing process are not linear. A lot of times this process goes backwards, forwards, left, and right. So a lot of times you'll think, hey, I'm in the proofreading stage, and you'll get another requirement for the document or something like that, and you'll have to go back to a previous stage. A lot of times when we write, these are going to be living documents that are never truly finished but will be continually updated. A lot of times the documents that we create in sort of a business or technical world, the information may change. We may get more information. Policies or procedures may change. And so just kind of keep in mind that these documents are going to go through many different stages. So let's talk about the planning stage. And there's some things that you're going to do in this stage. The first one is consider your writing situation. Are you writing alone? Are you writing with a team? Are you writing for one individual? Are you writing for a grant? Or are you writing instructions? Are you writing a company-wide memo? What is it that you are writing? Really spend some time thinking on what you're creating and why. Then you're going to start coming up with ideas about your subject. You probably already have a good idea of what information you'll need to include and some ways that you can do that. Get all of that information out of your head and into a Word document or a notepad, a journal, something like that. So then that frees up your brain capacity to really start doing some research and pulling in additional information that maybe you didn't know but need to include in your document. And then the last thing that you're going to do in the planning stage for creating a technical document is devise a schedule and a budget. A lot of times when somebody is creating a technical document, this is a process that will take a certain amount of time. It's not going to happen instantaneously. So think about, how long am I going to need to do this project, and what resources am I going to need to do this project? So let's think about your writing situation. The first thing that we're going to think about is your audience. This is, who is your reader? Who's going to be interacting with this, and why does it matter? And you also want to think about your reader's attitude and expectations. Is this going to be information that they are glad to receive, or information that maybe they don't want to think about but they have to? And then how and why will your reader use this document? And then the other thing that you want to consider is your purpose. After your readers have read or interacted with your document, what is it that you want them to know or to do? This is your purpose. So audience is all about them, but purpose is all about you. And then lastly, what beliefs or attitudes is it that you want your reader to adopt? And then think about your writing situation. What setting is this document going to exist in? Is this a high stakes or a low stakes situation? If we're talking about lunch in the break room, that's pretty low stakes. If we're talking about choosing your retirement plan, that's kind of a high stakes situation. So think about how people are going to be using this information and how it might impact them. Think about if your document is going to exist in a physical or a digital form, or both. How formal or informal is this going to be? Is this just regular, mundane, routine, everyday information? Or is this something that's really socially or politically charged? And how is that going to affect what you're sharing and how you're sharing it? Is this sort of enforce social or company norms? Or are we talking about more undefined norms of ethical behavior? If you're sending a memo out to your entire company saying, I know that we've always done things this way, but for this reason, now we're switching to something else, you're going to have to consider that when you're creating your document, because that's going to impact how people do their job, and there may be some big feelings around things like that. You also want to think about your document type. Sometimes your document type is already chosen for you. So for example, if your boss comes and says, send a company-wide email, you don't have any say in the matter. You're sending a company-wide email. But sometimes you may be creating a brochure versus creating a commercial, and you kind of have to think about what are your readers going to expect, and what delivery method will work best for the information that you're sharing. And then the last thing that I want you to always think about is your process. Is there already an existing process? A lot of times when we go into companies or organizations, they say, this is how you write memos at this company. This is what day the memos go out on. You need to give somebody at least 2 weeks notice about a memo relating to this. There might be an existing process. If that's the case, then that takes a lot of that decision-making responsibility away from you, but that's not always the case. So you want to think about how much time do you have to create this document? What is the budget? A lot of times, technical writers and people writing within a business atmosphere will be allowed X number of staff for X number of hours. So make sure that you are creating a plan that keeps it all within budget. Think about what tools or resources you have at your disposal. Think about collaboration. Is this something that you are going to be working on your own? Are you going to be working on it with a team? Is your boss going to look over it? Those sorts of things fall under collaboration. Think about document testing. Have somebody look at your document and kind of check it for the vibe that it gives out. Does it send the right message? A lot of times, we'll see things that are questionable in marketing or advertising, and we're like, oh my gosh, somebody signed off on that. Don't be the person that puts something out into the world where everybody thinks like, did nobody check this before they published it? And then the last thing that you really want to think about is what regular ongoing maintenance are you going to have to keep up with? If this information is subject to change, especially if it's subject to change fairly regularly, how can you create this document so that you can update it regularly? So let's talk about generating ideas. There's a couple of things that you can do. And these are all just suggestions, but the main suggestion here is do what works best for your brain. We don't all generate ideas in the same way, but these are just some ideas. The first one is asking the 6 journalistic questions. That's who, what, when, why, where, and how. So go through and answer these questions. Who's going to be getting this information? When do they need it? Why do they need it? Where do they need it? Those sorts of things. And this will help you make sure that you have created a thorough document if you've answered all of those questions. You can also try any sort of brainstorming activity that works well for you. You can try free writing, which is where you just sit down and write all of the ideas that are coming to your brain. You can try talking with someone. A lot of times people need to bounce ideas off of somebody. And if this is you, embrace it. Find somebody who you can have a short conversation with and just kind of talk about your ideas for this project. And then the last one up here, Clustering and branching. A lot of times you will see people sort of brainstorm visually, where they're kind of generating ideas. And then you get to the drafting process. This is where you start organizing and outlining your document, figuring out what is going to go in your document, where is it going to go. There are templates, but I'm going to caution you with using templates because a lot of times they can just be more frustrating than they are helpful. But there are style guides out there. When we think about things like business letters or emails or memos, there's specific formats that you can look at and use those style guides to help you sort of decide what information is going to be included in your document. So here's where I'm going to tell you to be wary of templates. There's a couple of reasons. First of all, they do not always reflect the best design principles. Sometimes they're really cluttered or it's difficult to pull information from the templates. So just be wary. I'm not telling you you can't use templates. I'm just saying that sometimes they don't actually save you time, energy, or effort. They can also bore readers. A lot of times, if you're a hiring manager and you see the same template for the same resume over and over and over again, it sort of pulls interest from what you're looking at. And then a lot of times templates can't help you answer the important questions about your document. When we're thinking about the audience who is going to be reading this and the purpose, what are your goals with this document? Templates don't always reflect that. And so sometimes when you use a template, instead of thinking about audience and purpose, you're more focused on just plugging things in, and you may miss something that you wouldn't have missed if you had not used a template. So here are some suggestions for drafting your document. Get comfortable, right? Try to draft it in the most unstressful environment possible. Start with the easiest topics. If you know this section is going to be a breeze to write, start with that one. If you know something is going to be really difficult or take a lot of mental capacity or take more time, save that one for later. Draft as quickly as you can. I suggest not stopping to get more information or revising in the middle of the drafting portion of writing. Don't stop in the middle of the section. Just get it all out. And then once you've gotten it all out and you have all of your sections created, then that's where you will go back and start your revising, editing, and proofreading steps. So let's talk about revising and editing. Once your draft is written, here's where you are going to study and analyze your work. And you can do this by asking yourself some questions. Does it meet readers' expectation? Think about who is going to be reading this and will it have the information they are looking for? Was there anything that you left out? Sometimes when we're drafting, we may look at the outline and decide, I'm going to skip that section. I'm not going to include it after all. But then when we go back and look at our document, we figure out, no, actually, I do think I needed it in there. Think about the organization of your document. Is it logical? Does it flow? Does it work? Does it make sense how it is organized? If you are trying to convince somebody of something, are your arguments well developed? Is the emphasis appropriate throughout the document? Is the most important pieces of information being emphasized? Is the draft honest? This is appropriate. This is important in business and technical writing. You need to tell the truth, right? And does it adhere to appropriate legal standards? A lot of times in business writing, there are things you can say and there are things that you cannot say. So make sure that you are following those standards. And then the last thing up here is, does the document come across as reliable and helpful? It doesn't matter what information that you have to share. If it's done in a condescending tone, it's not going to be well received. So make sure that your document comes across as reliable and helpful. revise by yourself, and then go revise with somebody else. You do have to do the first step yourself. That is always my suggestion. Go through, revise your document, get it as perfect as you can get it, and then once you've done that, that's when you go and seek help from others. So you should look at or talk to subject matter experts who knows the most in this field, and will they look at your document? And then look at actual and prospective users of the document. If there is a target audience for this document, go to that target audience or a representative of that target audience and ask questions like, is it user friendly? What do you think is the most important piece of information here? How easy is it for you to access the information here? And by asking those sorts of questions, you will be able to make sure that your document is achieving its purposes. Now, editing is a little bit different than revising, because editing is the process of checking the draft to improve its grammar, punctuation, style, usage, diction, and mechanics. So there's some things that you want to look at when you are editing. Are the paragraphs well developed? Are all the sentences clear and correct? Are all of the elements presented consistently? We talked about how to use consistency in a previous lecture. Is the design effective? Does it work? And are graphics used appropriately? So in addition to making sure that the mechanics and the grammar is correct, you want to make sure that sentence structure, paragraph structure, design elements, all of that are all used correctly. If you have any questions over anything that we talked about today, feel free to reach out. I am always happy to help.